The god of high school looks very boisterous in its key moments. I mean, we've got a shonen-type protagonist, some Armstrong wannabes, motorcycle chases, and even more in just episode 1. These are usually aspects that turn me off of an anime, but the god of high school is much more satisfying so far than others of this type. There's some small changes to the formula that make it seem to be a much more enjoyable experience, but before we get into those, let's do a quick recap so we're all on the same page. The God of High School is about a tournament of the same name, where participants from high schools all over compete to see who's the strongest of them across every field of martial arts, and the winner gets any wish granted by the shady corporation behind the event. Specifically, we follow Jin Mori, a happy-go-lucky student who just wants to fight stronger opponents, as well as Daewi and Mira, a brawler and swordswoman respectively. They have to climb the regional level up to nationals, eventually uncovering foes with borrowed power, an energy granted by supernatural entities, making the climb even more arduous as the true intentions of every party involved are slowly revealed. So let's talk about one of the most important aspects for an anime like this, the action. So far, it's not super outlandish, there's no charging beams or shooting lasers, but more of an abstracted, stylized reality taking realistic moves to a new level. It's sitting in just the right area to not be way too out there, but also not be too realistic either. I'd kind of dub it as anime badass. Jin and Han are both up close and personal fighters, throwing punches and kicks to dispatch foes, but ending in a surprise. They have an extreme amount of weight behind them, knocking down multiple challengers with the aftershock or launching them through the air. It's not real, but you also kind of wish it could be. Something else helping this feel is the fact that nobody yells out how someone got launched or is rendered speechless from watching a blow. This isn't 3 insanely powerful people in the real world, it's 3 well-trained fighters in their world. That's a very important distinction that's made from having minimal reactions in these fights, and a detail worth some props. Instead, their hits are made to feel more powerful with some of the best weight I've seen in anime. Now when I say weight, I mean the punches and kicks have a sort of consequence and physical reaction. It's how the effects always take a second to kick in after contact, the shockwaves and little lines on every blow, and how a punch will come in fast then come to that almost standstill as if all of the energy behind it is going right into the target. The best way to describe it is really just satisfying. Each one has a decent build, a good payoff, and doesn't go too far in either direction, letting the action flow along nicely, especially with the use of these hyper-dynamic, unbroken shots. Now for how dynamic the anime is, there are going to be some compromises with those unbroken shots to get the level of emphasis they do. Now this is mostly done by, in the middle of one of those dynamic shots, zooming in on an object and panning off, so technically the shot's not unbroken, but you can manipulate it in any way you have to. For anime though, this is still more than we often get to see, so I'm not going to really complain about it. Having fights not be cut to the death is always a plus, and in its rough ways this is almost more fitting for the action. Anime is always a bit hype dependent, and this facilitates that in a way that doesn't need characters standing around and calling out the fights. There are a couple cuts to single lines to emphasize something in a fight, which isn't a good sign, but they're single lines, they're short, as long as they don't move further than that, it's entirely workable. And it fits more with the dramatized reality nature. I mean, Jin breaks through a guardrail on his bike, goes over the cliff, catches up to a motorcycle on it, and physically tears up the ground with it too. It's absurd, but in a way to match what's being presented. So having the point of view flow in a similarly not quite real but not insane manner means the presentation and action are always in sync, and it feels like a very cohesive piece of media. Hey, quick plug, so I make tons of other videos like discussions in addition to reviews, first impressions, and comedy videos all about the anime you love. Consider subscribing for more in the future, or checking out a few other videos on anything from utter classics to modern hits. Also, I have a Discord server linked in the description for the channel if you want to talk anime with other fans or reach me directly. Anyway, back to the video. This actually provides some backing for the comedy moments as well. Rather than leaning heavily on detached verbal jokes like a lot of anime do, they incorporate them in a similar way. This is actually one of the first things we see with regards to Jin, and it's also a new twist on some typical tropes. He wakes up late to the first day of the tournament because he accidentally smashes his alarm clock, presumably still half asleep. This is what I mean by the jokes feeling more incorporated. It's not just a disconnected gag because it also provides some representation of his strength, and this new take on an old classic revives it to being actually funny for once. Then we get to the bike chase scene where he blasts Mira in the face with his bike tire. It's weighty just like the action, and although it stops the action, it's still part of it, and an actually funny slow-mo moment for once in any media. Same thing when she smashes into the sign. We also get some slight development out of the funny bits, like where Jin makes up a whole story for the old woman when she gets her purse stolen. He's blindly helping someone like any protagonist would, but in a very personal feeling and goofy way. It paints him as more of a dreamer or imaginative person, making his Goku complex feel more real while inciting laughs. And they show some self-awareness in the cornering scene. It pokes fun at my secret move scenes in anime, as well as its own absurdity. This makes me a little more optimistic that it'll be able to control itself with the standard anime comedy moments. You know, I always go over these. Weird faces, extreme anger, sexual jokes. Those are all still here, but they know it. So far, none of them were too much or too random, so it's mostly good signs on this front. Plus, that says it's not going to take itself seriously in the wrong moments. Where comic relief is often shoehorned in the middle of dramatic scenes, this gives me the feel that we might see a bit more tact than usual in that regard. Let's talk about some minor negatives though. Now, the opening scene is just there to establish some elements like the supernatural bits and later shady parts of the plot, but we can still see some warning signs in it. These seemingly mobster type characters are just throwaways to kickstart those elements, but even for throwaways, they're barely one note. I'm not saying to develop your 2-minute throwaway villains, but at least don't make their only trait completely hateable bastard. I'd feel more for this mystery man's motives if there was some sort of seeming connection he had to these characters, like having them be somewhat disappointed in cutting ties, giving us even the slightest hint of info about them. It doesn't leave me hopeful for minor villains in the future, even if it's only a couple of minutes. It also establishes right away that supernatural elements will be included, which is good. It's much better than dropping them in later, but that means the almost perfect level of absurdity in the action will likely fall to the wayside eventually. It could very well stay similar if the powers are still somewhat physical as the giant palm was, and that could work quite well, but will require a decent bit of restraint. I think it can still be good with a more mystical nature to it, but I'm hoping it won't lose the good qualities it's showing early on for that. Talking about the mystery behind the event though, we actually get some good subtle hints that this tournament isn't what it seems and it's really just a means to another end. Now, it's no secret that there's something shady going on behind it, but it's propped up by these nice subtle hints that are much better than just dropping it on the viewer later. The first round is like every video game nowadays, a battle royale, something none of the competitors expected, and even the rules explained just moments beforehand were for one-on-one combat. The wristbands, which display some sort of level system, could very easily turn into a negative power level element for cheap development, but they also make this scene just a little bit darker. No one starts fighting when they're told to, until one man attacks someone of a lower level. And later when Jin gets rushed, they base it on his weak appearance. It introduces an opportunistic element to the contestants that the hosts are trying to draw out. Then they throw a violent criminal into the mix, knowing he's stronger than most fighters there. All of this combined starts to drag down the stature of the tournament, providing backing to the fact that there is an alternative goal behind it. They're nice natural ways to start sowing the seeds of later developments without showing too much too fast. Hopefully this careful planning will stick around for later episodes. So overall, I'm very hopefully optimistic about the God of High School. It could just be me getting worn down to more standard action anime in my old age, but I think there are a few elements that set this one apart, and if they continue could make it a very great anime. Now, I could be wrong, I have been before, I'll admit that, but if you gave me a bet on this one, I'd still bet on the positive side. Anyway, that'll do it for this video, so time for the plugs everyone hates at the end of videos. If you want to see more videos like this, leave a like so I know to make more first impressions, or leave a comment letting me know which summer 2020 anime you want me to do one of these for next, because I do want to do this for most of the interesting anime coming out, so I know what to watch and you can get some impressions on them as well. If you're new, consider subscribing for more videos like this, like the ones on screen right now. Anyway, I'll stop rambling, let you get back on with your day, and just say thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon. Hopefully, I won't be out of breath next time I make a video. Fuck.